We start this hour in Britain, where the leaders of the group of 7 nations have agreed on a new global infrastructure plan to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. The G7 heads discussed the global economy, foreign policy, and measures to end the coronavirus pandemic on Saturday, the second day of their summit in Britain. The White House announced that the leaders agreed on a new infrastructure initiative for low and middle income countries called Build Back Better World. It says the scheme will collectively catalyze hundreds of billions of dollars of infrastructure investment for developing nations in the coming years. The White House also says it will be carried out in a transparent and sustainable manner. A U.S. official says the plan is in response to Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative investment scheme. Washington has criticized that initiative as a debt trap, which saddles countries with massive loans from China. The G7 heads were joined in person for the discussion on the pandemic by the leaders of South Korea, South Africa, and Australia. They were joined online by the Prime Minister of India. The leaders agreed on a declaration that calls for the development of new vaccines and treatments within 100 days of the identification of a future pandemic threat. Japanese Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide and French President Emmanuel Macron met on the sidelines of the G7 summit. They agreed on closer cooperation in security, technology, and North Korea. Suga welcomed France's stronger engagement in the Indo-Pacific region, including deployment of military vessels. Suga sought stronger ties with France in the region, and Macron agreed. Suga asked for Macron's cooperation with the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympic Games, as well as the Paris Games in 2024. Macron expressed his support and said he looks forward to the opening ceremony. Suga also spoke with U.S. President Joe Biden. Biden expressed support for the Japanese Prime Minister's commitment to the upcoming Tokyo Games. Suga said his government will take every possible measure to reduce infection risks to make sure the Games are safe and secure. The G7 leaders are due to release a joint communique to wrap up their summit. Suga told Biden he wants to work closely together to spearhead the discussions and issue a strong message. Biden agreed. Several hundred Myanmar residents in Britain and their supporters have rallied to urge G7 countries to save democracy in their home country. Protesters took part in the demonstration on Saturday in Falmouth, where the International Media Center is located. They marched with placards calling for G7 leaders to take concrete action for democracy and freedom in Myanmar.
If we can't get democracy, the military will rule and they will keep killing people.
They must act now rather than issuing statements.
Protesters are saying that the situation in Myanmar is getting worse. They say if democracy is forgotten, the military will strengthen its control and more citizens will pay the price. Myanmar's military has accused armed ethnic groups of training civilians who have been protesting since the coup on February 1st, and it suggests it could take countermeasures.
People trained in the use of explosives have been destroying schools and public buildings.
The military says authorities have identified at least 3 armed groups that are training what it calls terrorists. It says that information came from people who have been detained. There are about 20 armed ethnic groups in Myanmar. There are concerns that the military could step up airstrikes in areas where they think these groups are training civilians. Pro-democracy forces announced last month that they had created the People's Defense Force to protect civilians from the military crackdown. Elderly people in Japan started getting coronavirus vaccines 2 months ago. The latest government data show over 30% of them have now had their first dose. More than 11 million people aged 65 or older have been given their first shot, while nearly 2 million have received their second. The speed of the rollout for the elderly has been similar in both Tokyo and Osaka. A major vaccination site in one of Akita Prefecture's cities has started using special syringes to be more efficient. The syringes can extract 7 doses from a single vaccine vial instead of the usual 5 or 6. The city wants to finish vaccinating residents of all ages by late August.
We will vaccinate as many people as possible, making good use of 7-dose syringes.
Private companies are also stepping up efforts to inoculate their workers. Japanese airline All Nippon Airways and Japan Airlines previously announced plans to begin offering employees vaccinations at their workplaces on Monday, but ANA decided to kickstart its program on Sunday instead. The carrier had reportedly finished arranging schedules for its employees and medical workers. It had also secured enough vaccines. ANA says pilots and cabin crew members engaged in international flight operations will be vaccinated first. Meanwhile, Osaka Governor Yoshimura Hirofumi spoke about the state of emergency that is due to expire on June 20th. He indicated he will ask the central government to keep tight restrictions in place if the emergency is lifted. Officials across the nation recorded nearly 2,000 new cases on Saturday. 52 people were confirmed dead. In Tokyo, 467 new cases were reported, and that's up 31 from a week ago, and it comes after the city posted week-on-week declines for 29 straight days. A wealthy bidder has won a quick trip to space with Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. The winning bid was a cool $28 million.
Awesome, thank you. And that is sold $28 million to number 107.
The rocket and capsule developed by Bezos' company Blue Origin will be launched on July 20th. Bezos and his younger brother will be on board. The capsule has 6 seats, one of which was put on auction. The reusable rocket and capsule, which will reach an altitude of about 100 kilometers, crossing the internationally recognized boundary of space. The company says it will take about 11 minutes from launch to landing. The passenger will be able to experience about 3 minutes of zero gravity before returning to Earth. The firm says the name of the winning bidder will be released in a few weeks. The proceeds will be donated to Blue Origin's Foundation Club for the Future, which promotes science and technology education for children. And those were the main stories for this hour.
Leaders at the G7 summit in Cornwall are expected to spend the last day discussing plans to tackle climate change. Earlier, the group outlined proposals to challenge China's global investment programme with one of its own. The leaders took time out on Saturday evening for a beach barbecue, but China, which isn't invited, says the days when a small group of countries decided the fate of the world are now gone. Fellow footballers have been sending messages of support to the Denmark midfielder Christian Erickson, who collapsed during the Euro 2020 match against Finland on Saturday. The 29-year-old is in a stable condition in hospital. And the Israeli parliament will vote later on whether to approve a new coalition government. If it votes yes, it will mean Benjamin Netanyahu will be removed as prime minister after spending the last 12 years in office.